Caitlin Clark sat down at the podium, still feeling energized after a match that had commentators and the audience on fire.
Exhausted.
She fielded the typical inquiries with grace, talking about her tactics, her colleagues, and her incredible performance. However, after that, merely as the meeting came to an end, the reporter broke the tension with a nobody anticipated the comment. It wasn't a query. It was shocking. The space fell silent. Clark stopped. Her face said it all. What precisely was said then? And why was she unable to speak? Let's dissect it. The pivotal moment. The public admission by Stephen A. Smith to Clark. Caitlin, the Fever from Indiana, had just achieved an incredible victory of 94-87, surpassing the current champions, the Las Vegas, on their home court, Aces at the Gainbridge Fieldhouse. Not just any victory, though. It was a assertion. Additionally, leading that assertion, Caitlin, the rookie sensation, was back.
Clark.
Her performance was outstanding. Of electricity, the figures appear to be like something from a video game. 28 points from a blazing 11 of 18. The field 6 deep threes, 12. 5 rebounds, 2 assists, and only 2 turnovers throughout the course of 38 non-stop minutes. This victory was more than a simple pat. Statistics. Indiana was pushed hard into postseason spot in a few of weeks, remaining in the season, drawing attention to the league. The structure hummed with vigor even after the last siren. The post-game press was crowded with reporters. Cameras clicked steadily in the room. Rhythm and the atmosphere seemed tense, as if there was something surprising in the works.
Clark
reached the podium with poise and concentrated, responding to the typical surge of inquiries with her now famous blend of humility and ferocity. Holly Rowe on ESPN began by asking an inquiry regarding Clark's growing rapport on the court in relation to Aaliyah Boston, particularly their deadly pick-and-roll procedure, which scored 18 points while tearing up the A's defense. Within the paint, Clark grinned broadly, calmed down, and stated, "The trust is truly constructing. Aaliyah has exhibited patience during. I adapt to the pro game's tempo. It seems like we were reading to each other tonight, other people's thoughts." However, then an unexpected move out of the front row. Stephen A. Smith, the constantly outspoken and fervent ESPN pundit with a fiery reputation. Finally, views and TV showmanship. He held up his hand.
So far, he had been
abnormally silent, watching instead of being in charge, which was uncommon for someone in his presence. When Clark noticed him, gave a nod. "Stephen A.," she said, "go ahead." He rose gradually. No erratic movements, no loud voice, only a heavy, reflective quiet. His voice didn't correspond with his brand. It was deeper, softer, and almost heavy. The space moved. The cameras refocused. The typing ceased. Even the PR team for the Fever stopped in their tracks. "Caitlin," he started, "this is what I've been doing for more than 30 years. I've discussed each and every kind of player you can think of. Rookies, legends, and letdowns. I have constructed a career pointing out athletes when they fail to live up to expectations. It's how I generate a living. However, observing you this season, observing your handling of the learning curve, the pressure, the hype, it caused me to reconsider a few things." He stopped and rubbed his face in what appeared to such a sincere feeling. "This wasn't a demonstrate. I've needed to state openly and honestly something I need to express regret." The whole room remained motionless until the issue arose, not a proposition, but a confession disguised as a question. How do you stay so graceful and concentrate when others like me, namely myself, have occasionally been unjust, too judgmental, and even incorrect? Regarding your move to the WNBA, quietness. Caitlin Clark, usually serene, under duress, stood dumbfounded. A participant in the screaming road combat. Fans, fierce matches in the Final Four, and constant allusions to her college. Statistics, she unexpectedly discovered herself. Unable to speak, she opened her mouth and then her hands, which had moved, paused, with assurance when responding earlier. Now, questions were motionless on the podium. At last, she muttered, "Wow, I don't. Not really sure how to respond." Kelsey Mitchell, Nalissa Smith, and yourself, halfway down. The corridor leading to the squad bus, paused and whirled around, feeling the gravity of what was taking place. It was an uncommon, unfiltered, an iconic moment in professional sports. The athlete was taken entirely by surprise, not by a challenging query, but by an unanticipated display of respect and humility. Her voice came back, steady but wavering. "That matters more than you, Stephen A. Most likely, you are aware that it has been difficult. The critique, the analogies, the doubts, but it motivated me to put forth more effort. To demonstrate my inclusion not only in the league but to my team and myself." Hesitated once more, but not out of surprise, but contemplation. The following statement from Stephen A. stretched that delicate moment even farther, leaving even the most. So, season reporters are stunned. What precisely did he disclose? Keep observing to learn. Stephen A. Smith makes yet another shocking admission regarding. Stephen A. Smith sat with Caitlin Clark. Nevertheless, his face extraordinarily somber. Next, he extended a steady hand into his blazer and took out several folded paper pages that weren't typed or. These were handwritten, unpolished, and genuine. It was evident what was not improvised but soon to happen. This wasn't your typical sports interpretation. Was more profound, a reckoning, and there was a sense of it in the room. "There's something I need to say," Smith said. Started speaking more softly than usual. "And I must express it publicly because I publicly chastised someone. I've made remarks that weren't really reasonable or even completely knowledgeable, and I now require to give them names." He looked at the documents, suddenly turned to face front, and started to read. "On First Take 3 months ago, I claimed that Caitlin Clark was overhyped, accused our business and ESPN of exaggerating her fame only to increase ratings. I stated that she still has a lot to go, that she hadn't demonstrated her abilities. Her success in college did not imply that she could manage the experts." His remarks reverberated in the press room. Some journalists had placed, not using their phones. Clark's Indiana, Erica and Aaliyah Boston teammates. Wheeler stood silently in the rear. Weren't there to express themselves. Were merely there, captivated by the unexpected emotion erupting in front of. Smith went on. "Of them. I framed my logical and statistical argument, but my message and tone were contemptuous. Disregarded her previous actions, how she had completely altered the mood about the WNBA in a few brief weeks." Smith's voice now became more steady, louder, more purposeful. "This is what. Since then, I've discovered that Caitlin Clark is averaging 8.4 assists and 19.5 points per game throughout her first season. Terrace's average was just 17 points per game. Sue Bird was just 14.4 in his freshman year. Clark's. Not only are the figures good, they're historic." He went beyond the numbers. "Attendance increases when Indiana plays. TV ratings have tripled, and they are close to 50%. And her jersey sales have increased by more than 200%. Beyond the commercial aspect, it's her poise, her attitude, and the way she gives credit. The way she prioritizes her teammates over herself. She attends this league the day following." The room appeared to be frozen that day. Instead of typing, seasoned reporters listened. Smith's voice carried emotion. "Was unavoidable. I was mistaken. It's incorrect to inquire about you, Caitlin. Your preparedness. It's incorrect to question your impact. I kept you in the past. Standards. I am indebted to you, the league, and our viewers a genuine. The room changed when he apologized. Fireworks erupted from flashbulbs. Leaning forward, reporters took pictures. Every word was erased by ESPN's Holly Rowe. Even as she scrawled in her eyes, tears. Adrian Woroski's journal, typically stoic, using his phone to record. He had a gut feeling that this was history. Sue Bird even got up and gave a gentle clap. Initially, then with greater fervor. Others soon joined, including media personnel, manufacturing teams, including employees with fever. It was no longer a news conference. It was an instant. Aaliyah Boston approached to the podium and put a gentle touch there, on the shoulder of Clark. Caitlin hadn't stated not a single word. Her eyes filled with emotion. Her chest gradually lifted and fell, attempting to interpret the scene, unfolding all around her, and then everyone's eyes looked in her direction. What would she say? Is she going to accept his apology? Would she cry if she called him out? And with that, the room waited, holding its breath, expecting Clark's answer. However, what she did, even the most experienced left journalists in disbelief. Continue to observe as we find out everything. Caitlin Clark retaliates with a strong message. After taking a breath, Caitlin Clark's voice, firmer and steadier now, although still wrapped in feeling. You're not Odin. I'm sorry, she murmured, staring at Stephen A. Smith. The purpose of the media is to put us to the test. It is meant to push, to review, to ensure that we're obtaining our out there. That pressure is a component of the work. What is most important to me? Not that you ever question me, but that you're standing here today, recognizing that your viewpoint has evolved since the facts shifted. That sort of honesty requires courage. What she said, much more than simply bounce off the walls. They sat down in the space. She looked slowly, observing the other reporters, a large number of who had inquired about her early difficulties during the difficult beginning of her WNBA career. Travel. She was devoid of resentment. Look, just clarity. To be honest, she, adding, I was enraged by the comments. It forced me to work harder, go farther, and not only to quiet the clamor, but to demonstrate. I could hang with the greatest if I had my own space. Thought I might influence things at this level. The transition from collegiate to professional was harsh and genuine, but I knew I would determine it. At that point, the tone of it changed the news conference. What started off as a standard post-game Q&A now felt more akin to an insightful roundtable regarding media accountability, regarding pressure, regarding the changing landscape of women's basketball. It became intimate, and Adrian Woroski was sitting, and everyone sensed it, silently raised his hand toward the rear. His startling news scoops have made him famous. Rarely softly, Caitlin spoke, confirming the statement made by Stephen A. Do you think that the media's portrayal of women's basketball has evolved since you arrived? What are your expectations? Next? She nodded, and Clark took her time, carefully before responding. It's significantly and favorably modified. The coverage has increased significantly. Cameras, more admirers, and more young females observing and thinking that this could be their future. That's enormous, but more focus implies more pressure as well.
And while
that isn't always a negative thing, it only works if the critique is reasonable and knowledgeable. She looked back to Smith for a moment. I respect that about today.
What?
Stephen A. stated that he's growing and observing. Women's basketball is more than just a reflection of the men's game. We're constructing something new, quicker, more intelligent, and unique. It requires coverage that takes that into account. We don't require generic commentary. We require those who understand what makes this moment special. History. Former WNBA player Rebecca Lobo leaned forward and became an ESPN analyst. Voice gave the encounter a deeper level of blend. Caitlin, you've been referred to as the face of the WNBA's comeback. That's a big label. How did you bear that burden? Clark grinned, no longer distracted. To be honest, I never intended to be a guard. Anything's face, but when you feel the strain, you risk breaking or get up. She hesitated. What happened next? However, it wasn't a query, rather it was the unexpected letter. But who was the author? What was it that Caitlin was left with? Refusing to cry?
Hold on to your
Screen. The document that cut off the Stephen A. Smith had already entered the room, astonished the audience with an emotional public apologies, but the stillness that followed. Even the most experienced journalists sat down again slowly, the room quiet, emotionally charged, and at one point, once more into his inside pocket jacket. This time, he produced a piece of paper that is wrinkled and worn at the folds, as though it had been